The outpost on Verith 9 was never meant to be permanent. It was a way station, a forgotten checkpoint on the edge of contested space where supply ships rarely stopped and communications lagged by weeks. Kale had been stationed there for 8 months, alone except for the wind that howled through the canyon and the occasional scavenger that wandered too close to the perimeter.
She didn't mind the solitude.
After 3 tours through the siege wars, silence was a luxury. The Velrathi were not what she expected. They arrived one twilight, emerging from the rust-colored rocks like shadows given form, predators by evolution, sleek, four-armed, their eyes gleaming with bioluminescent fury. Kale had seen the intelligence reports. The Velrathi were apex hunters, their young raised in packs that learned to kill before they learned to speak. They respected only strength, only ferocity. She stood her ground when the pack approached, her rifle held low but ready. The Alpha, a scarred female twice Kale's size, studied her with those unblinking eyes. For a long moment, neither moved. Then the Alpha did something unexpected. She sat. Behind her, 5 cubs tumbled into view, their movements clumsy but curious. One of them, the eldest, Kyle would later learn her name was Sira, padded forward with exaggerated caution, sniffing the air between them. Kale slowly lowered her weapon. The Alpha's ears flicked forward. A test passed. Over the following weeks, an understanding formed. The Velrathi pack claimed the southern ridge as their territory. Kale maintained the outpost. They avoided each other mostly, except for the cubs who possessed that universal trait of youth. Boundless, reckless curiosity. Sira was the boldest. She would creep to the edge of the compound when she thought Kale wasn't watching, her siblings trailing behind. Kale pretended not to notice at first, but eventually began leaving scraps of her rations near the fence. Not charity, an offering between equals. The cubs began to mimic her. It started small. Sira would stand on her hind legs the way Kale did during her morning patrols, trying to match the human's upright posture despite her quadrupedal build. The younger cubs attempted to march in formation, their steps hilariously uncoordinated. Kale found it amusing until the day she realized what they were actually doing. They were learning discipline. The Velrathi were hunters, but humans were soldiers. There was a difference. Where the cubs' instincts taught them ambush and overwhelm, Kale's routines taught them patience, structure, watchfulness. Sira observed everything. How Kale checked the perimeter at fixed intervals. How she maintained her equipment with ritualistic care. How she never, ever relaxed her vigilance. One morning, Kale discovered her combat helmet missing. She found it an hour later on Sira's head, comically oversized. The younger cubs chittering with what could only be laughter. Sira stood at the compound's eastern corner, perfectly still, mimicking the guard stance Kale took every dawn. The helmet slipped down over her eyes, but she refused to remove it, adjusting her posture to keep it balanced. Kale should have taken it back. Instead, she watched as Sira maintained her post for the full hour, exactly as long as Kale's patrols lasted. When the cub finally removed the helmet and carefully set it down, not discarded but placed with respect, Kyle understood. This wasn't play. This was aspiration. The war found them on a cold morning 3 months later. The raiders came without warning, a splinter group of Kresh marauders who'd heard about the isolated outpost and assumed it would be easy pickings. 8 of them, armed and armored, moving with the confidence of predators who'd never met anything more dangerous than themselves. Kale was outnumbered and outgunned. She triggered the distress beacon knowing help was days away, then took position behind the compound's blast barriers. She would make them pay for every meter. The first raider fell to her rifle. The second managed to return fire, forcing her into cover. Then the screaming started. The Velrathi came from the rocks like a storm given teeth and fury. The Alpha led the charge, but behind her, 5 cubs fought with a precision that shocked even Kale. They didn't swarm. They flanked. They coordinated. They used cover. And at their head, wearing Kale's oversized combat helmet like a badge of honor, Sira directed her siblings with sharp barks and tactical positioning that would have impressed any human sergeant. The battle lasted 4 brutal minutes. When it ended, 3 raiders were dead, the rest fleeing into the wasteland. Kale had taken shrapnel to her shoulder but was alive. The cubs were battered but standing. Their first real hunt completed not with wild savagery but with calculated violence. Sira approached, the helmet still strapped to her head despite the dents and scorch marks it had collected. She sat before Kale, mimicking the formal rest position she'd seen the human take 100 times. The alpha watched from a distance, her luminescent eyes unreadable. Then she dipped her head, a gesture that transcended species. Acknowledgement. Respect. In the weeks that followed, as Kale recovered and reinforcements finally arrived, the helmet remained with Sira. The eldest cub wore it during the pack's patrols, teaching her siblings the discipline she'd learned from watching the human. Other Velrothi packs heard the story of predator cubs who learned to be soldiers who wore the armor of their human teacher as a symbol of a new way. The day Kale left Verith 9, her transfer finally approved, she stood before the pack one last time. Sira approached, the helmet held carefully in her forelegs. For a moment, Kale thought she meant to return it. Instead, Sira placed it on the ground between them, then stepped back and stood at attention. Perfect posture, perfect form. Behind her, 4 cubs did the same. A formation, a unit, a honor guard. The alpha stepped forward and spoke, her translator device crackling with the effort of rendering Velrothi concepts into human language. Your strength was not in your weapons. It was in your patience, in your watchfulness, in teaching those who wished to learn. Kale saluted. The cubs, trained by observation, returned it in their own fashion. As her transport lifted from the outpost, Kyle looked down to see Sira wearing the helmet once more, standing watch over the compound. A predator cub keeping guard duty, not because she had to, but because a human veteran had shown her why discipline mattered more than ferocity. Humanity's greatest weapon had never been its technology or its tactics. It was its ability to inspire, to teach, to transform even apex predators into something more than their instincts demanded. The helmet remained on Verith 9, passed down through generations of Velrothi cubs, a reminder that true strength came not from the hunt, but from the watch.